Hello there. You're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. No, what did I say? Did I say it's a comedy show?
Salubrious home on the web?
Yeah, did I say it's a comedy show about the news? Because it's not. It's a news show that's an occasional comedy.
Yeah, are we rebranding? My wife pointed that out. She walked into the room the other night and was like, "Are you guys not a comedy show anymore?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, hurtful? Are we not funny?" And
we received some
George
feedback
said at the start, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, he cowboyed that. I must have just missed it."
It's
we received some friendly feedback, and we're trying to adjust users' and listeners' expectations accordingly to reframe the paradigm in which we sit.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. Was this that AI feedback that George sent us?
This was the feedback from best-selling author Jack Heath, actually, I think you'll find.
Okay. Great.
Which he obviously
thanks, Jack.
didn't run by you.
That's maybe some more helpful feedback. I was going to say, if this is that weird AI summary that's like, oh, your transitions are all like good and stuff, but doopity-doop. No, shut up. You're an algorithm. You don't know what's good.
So what Tom's talking about there is I took one of the audio from one of our episodes. I ran it through a transcription AI, got it to transcribe it, and then sent it to, I think it was Gemini, to get it to sort of give us some feedback on how we could be better. And, well, look, it's rung my fucking bell, had my number down pat. It's like, George talks too much.
Oh, yeah, but it was also like the constant references to Adam not being there might not be useful to certain listeners. I'm like, fuck you. I'm going to mention that Adam's not there when he's not there even more now.
And we've just done it again. Again, to clarify, it's a podcast about news and politics that is ever so occasionally funny. Now,
with humour sprinkled in. I think we need to redesign the phrasing of the implication to which you're getting at.
If anything, make it longer. And even more new. Like, it's really
more wordy. Let's get more words.
Wordier, more specific. And I think it'll be great. It'll really hook the listeners in.
We need to feed the AI. Right, we need to feed the beast. They demand
get the slop.
They demand more training data. So
we are Burke to the AI's thing upstairs.
Now the AI would ask you to
Thank
explain that niche reference to the audience, I think.
And you know what? If the AI doesn't know about the seminal children's series Trapdoor, then I invalidate its opinion.
All right.
I think that just invalidates its opinion.
Donald Trump, who is a person who persists on living against all popular opinion, has threatened to slap the company Apple with a 25% tariff on its iPhones if they are manufactured abroad. You might be wondering, George, does Apple manufacture any of its iPhones domestically in the United States of America? To which I would say, have you paid $7,000 for an iPhone lately? In which case, if the answer is no, then the answer is no. They don't manufacture any of their iPhones domestically. Because
if the answer is yes, you're enabling scalpers.
Yeah. Someone is taking advantage of you. Yeah, like that woman I saw on Reddit where this guy's like, I think my mum got scammed. And it's like clearly an Android phone that's got like an Apple skin on it. And it says like iPhone 16 Pro Max, but it's like clearly just like a shitty Android phone. That's that might be what we have to do in order to get around some of these sanctions. So Trump, this week threatened to slap Apple with a 25% tariff on iPhones sold in the US if they're manufactured abroad. And when he says abroad, I guess he means anywhere abroad, not just in China. So part of the reshoring effort that Apple, well, not even reshoring, it's kind of supply chain diversification away from China, has been, sort of to import some of their supply chain for the iPhone to places like India and things like that, which technically would serve some of Trump's aims if the aim is to sort of contain China. But not serve some of his aims if the aim is to actually have, as Howard Lutnick said on television the other week, to actually have millions of Americans screwing in tiny iPhone screws as their full-time jobs. That's probably not going to achieve that aim. And what it does is it actually puts, ironically, Apple, which is an American-based company, at a disadvantage to providers like Samsung and which is obviously a South Korea based.
Yeah, I was gonna say Korea.
company.
Yep.
Um,
Same with LG. I think do LG still make phones?
I think
feel
they
I should know
do.
that.
It is quite niche, but I think they do
Yeah.
still have some phones out there. They're definitely still in the
The kind of ones
TV
you can get from the
space.
supermarket for get a quick burner phone.
Yeah.
for-
If you're a drug
for
dealer, they're drug
$100.
dealer phones.
Yeah.
There's still it is weird because it's like this tariff. If you're going to tariff just specifically an American company for manufacturing offshore, but that tariff amount is more than the flat 10% tariff amount that you have on South Korea, for example, then that means that Samsung is going to be more competitive in the United States than Apple is going to be in the United States, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
But they'll just raise the South Korean tariffs, they'll just sort it out.
Yeah.
Done.
Well,
we're chicken dinner.
I see the thinking in that you're going like,
thinking is such a strong word.
Yeah,
to use.
I know. Yeah, it's like I hesitated for a second there, but that you're going, hey Apple, we're gonna actively harm you and give your competitors an edge unless you start manufacturing them in the States. I see how an idiot sees that as like, so then they'll start making them in the United States, right? Bingo, bango, well done, Trump. You did it. But no, that's not how any of this works. No. They can't just start making them in America like that. It's a dumb person's smart idea.
It's as we've discussed on the show, like smartphones in particular are,
the supply chain's huge.
The supply chain for a smartphone is massive. It involves dozens of countries, raw materials from, dozens of places around the world that need to be refined, that need to be, where would you even, at what point in the supply chain are we talking about? Are we talking about onshoring? Are we talking about just the assembly of the phones? Because even that is requires a lot of specialized equipment, people with specialized training. We don't
they want though, George. They
in
want
the United
States. They want to get them all trained up and
right, but they don't even have the equipment that you would need to bring in to do the assembly is made in China. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like even the machines that you would need to get and make to have in the United States.
Just chuck some lithium on the back of a truck. It's all good, to throw it at the wall, little stick,
Assembling microprocessors, you just need like steady hands and some tweezers, right? Like what kind of machine do you actually need to make like billions upon billions of transistors that are thinner than a human hair?
I reckon
a tweezers.
A hammer, maybe a drill. What else do you need in your workshop? If Dad had a workshop, so I reckon we'll go.
A
saw, a vice. Definitely a vice. Need something to hold it.
Still. Like intense pressure on those tiny microprocessors before you start like soldering anything. A soldering iron. That's what you need. You got to solder these things on.
I should probably wear a hard hat as well for safety.
Hard hat, goggles, and a cup.
Yep.
It's exactly the sort of job that Joe Bob, who used to work at the windscreen factory, is perfectly suited to. This kind of like extremely highly technical, precise sort of labor. I think it's really going to bring back the gerbs in Ohio. So I think it's perfect.
Let's make now, based off that informed discussion, a multi-trillion-dollar policy announcement about that and formalise that as part of America's economic platform.
Great.
What can go wrong?
Look, let's put a couple $100 billion and 5 to 10 years worth of effort into that right now. I think why not?
Let's do it. Fire it up.
It does seem like it might not exist next week, depending on like what Trump's looking at. But like, I'd say let's go ahead with this completely pointless investment right now. So
America first, man.
And also, it's like it's also just crazy. Like, this is one of those we're going to admit how we're all complicit in something really terrible, but to make a point. But like, it's not just the supply chain and the like infrastructure and all that required to put all this sort of stuff together, but also like smartphones, your game consoles, your PC parts, your consumer electronics generally is also predicated on, at best, terrible workplace practices, at worst like slave labor,
human slave labor.
Yeah.
100%.
So it's also like you've got to be like, not only do you need all this specialized equipment, but these people who are then maybe who are trained up to use this equipment or to just be assembling the things themselves are doing so under conditions where they put big nets on the sides of the building so they can't kill themselves.
Yeah,
and so they want that unless you're willing to do that in America, then they're going to be more expensive fucking anyway. That's also another reason they're not $7,000.
The nets will be better in America. Like that's
good quality American nets.
Good quality American nets. And look, at the end of the day, it's an efficiency dividend. You know, share price grow up, graph goes up and to the right very sharply because that's where the costs.
In actuality,
not the profit. The costs graph goes up.
The costs
very
graph
sharply.
goes up. I thought it was the worker suicide numbers graph.
Also that
goes up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's also, there's a correlation.
Yeah,
there's a correlation.
They're plotted on the same graph.
Right.
Yeah. It's so bad and dumb on so many levels. I almost don't even know how to jump in to this story because it's so do you take it of all the Mag 7 companies, the Magnificent Seven, right? The large tech companies over in the United States.
Yeah.
Apple has suffered the worst, in terms of its growth over the last, whatever it is, 6 months as a result of the Trump sort of tariff situation, mainly because they exist at the intersection between hardware and software. If you look at the others like Google, Amazon, whatever, Nvidia, I suppose is probably more hardware based, Microsoft, they are much more in the soft, probably Nvidia with being the exception because they they don't actually do the manufacturing themselves. They hand it out to OEMs who then do the manufacturing.
TSMC and stuff in
Thailand. So they probably actually wouldn't have that much exposure on the hardware stuff, even though their main product is graphics cards. But
Taiwan, sorry, correct myself, Taiwan, not Thailand.
Yes. So Apple has been caught in a kind of a weird position with all of this because it's Amazon. Yeah, Amazon has hardware components. They do, voice assistants whose name, if I speak them aloud, will sign on and interrupt the podcast. So I'm not going to do that.
And we can't criticize Amazon too much on the show because it'll hear you, George.
It will hear me, yeah.
It's listening to everything you do to make sure that, Big Brother wants to make sure that you double plus good love your sweet, fast delivery.
I did sign on to my surveillance agreement without reading it, so I'm certain that I've signed over all of my bodily autonomy and rights for the next 1,000 years and into this galaxy and the next. But, Apple's kind of at a unique disadvantage compared to the other Mag 7 companies because they're primarily more sort of software based than Apple is. Apple does a lot of their own manufacturing, or they don't do it. They farm it out to companies, but it's much more a part of their process. For example, Google makes phones. That's a pretty small part of Google's business. It's more Android, the operating system, which they license out to other phone makers and things like that. Whereas Apple has a fully integrated, vertically integrated stack, which is in normal times great for profitability. We make the hardware, we make the chips now as well, which goes into the hardware. We make the software, we make the
complete control of your ecosystem.
You've got complete control of the ecosystem, and they've got a number of different home electronics products which fit into that ecosystem, which then build up a bit of a moat around the ecosystem. So if you want to go, if you've got AirPods, an iPhone, an iPad, a MacBook, for your next computer, are you going to go get a MacBook or are you going to go get a...
Or are you going to try and make Windows work with all that?
Right. So, it kind of, keeps you in their ecosystem. And ordinarily vertical integration is a great business strategy, right? We saw it work for Rockefeller, owning everything from an oil perspective, owning everything from the pump to the pump, where you pump it out of the ground to where you pump it into the car. That made him the richest man in America, right, for a long time. Vertical integration is very profitable for that reason. But it's also meant that Apple's really exposed because they have the whole value supply chain, and now basically the rules of capitalism have changed because Donald Trump said so. And they've basically said, okay, well, that manufacturing needs to take place here, which basically restructures the entire world. There's this book that I've started listening to called Apple in China, which basically talks about how the company Apple basically created the manufacturing base in China. Like the amount of investment that Apple, as one company, Apple specifically made in supply chains in China and domestic manufacturing there, is like, they tried to translate it into modern dollars, but they're like, so basically, at one stage, Apple was investing something like $50 plus billion a year into domestic manufacturing capacity in China, right? And translated against things like the Marshall Plan, which was how the United States and other countries rebuilt Europe after the Second World War. It's roughly double the yearly spend of what they spent on the Marshall Plan in today's dollars, right? So it's and other like massive, huge spending infrastructure projects they used as examples, multiple times those in today's dollars is what Apple was spending in China for several years. So they've spent hundreds of billions, maybe trillions of dollars over 20, 30 years in developing this supply chain ecosystem in China, and to which China obviously has been a massive beneficiary, right?
Yeah, but it's like please and thank you for trillions and trillions of dollars.
Thanks very much. You more or less single-handedly made us a developed economy, made us a developed manufacturing hub. But yeah, it's obviously an effort that A, takes a lot of money, but like B, takes significant time to build up. You can't just transplant all of that into America. It would take 5 to 10 years and be enormously expensive to just like go, okay, well, we spent $1 trillion doing it over in China. Like, let's start again from scratch. It's like, it's not how it works, buddy. Like,
paying the US dollar rate as well.
Yeah.
We've mentioned this stuff on the podcast before. What's interesting here is that previously, as you said, they were diversifying into India as a way of getting around the specific Chinese tariff. So
this is during the first Trump administration. They started doing that, and it's been we saw before the Trump tariffs kicked in April. Apple
didn't they ship
thousands like a shitload of phones? Literally like 2 million units of phones out of India into America to try and get them in the country before things hit. So it's like it's clearly something they've been doing for a while, but it's not. It's still heavily reliant on China. Everything in the region, manufacturing-wise, is heavily reliant on China, right?
So, from what I heard, what's different about... Well, not obviously what's different is he's threatening directly Apple with a tariff.
Specifically company, an American company. That's so crazy.
Yeah. And so, from what I heard is he had a conversation with Tim Cook about it.
Tim Apple, you mean?
Tim Apple. And... allegedly, that was the outcome of the conversation. Now, I'm not sure. Has he actually said this threat? Is it a public threat? Has it been in the Twitter feeds? Like, where has he been making these threats? Because I wonder whether
I'm pretty sure this is
just
public.
him trying to put a bit of I wonder whether it's just him trying to put a bit of pressure behind the scenes on Apple, or how much of it's a public sort of shirt fronting, so to speak, to use the Tony Abbott parlance. So,
as far as I'm aware, it's public. I don't think it's been leaked.
Okay. So, I'm just curious. Is this?
Oh yeah, no. Here we go. So I'm just pulling this from the article. I think this is from on Twitter or Truth Social. I have long ago informed Tim Cook of Apple that I expect their iPhones built will be sold in the United States of America, will be manufactured and built here in the United States, not in India or any place else. So it's as public as you can get. It's on his public Twitter.
So he had a conversation. Now he's outing that conversation.
And Tim Cook's obviously going, mate, the whole reason I was there was to kiss your ass so you would like give us some exemptions on our smartphones, not so you would fucking kick the tariffs into overdrive, buddy.
So, and this is probably a good segue to our next video, is like, what are the odds that he sticks to this?
Almost
what
none.
Are the odds?
The man is a bumbly, fumbly moron, and he will capitulate on almost anything, anywhere. Like, it's so funny for a man who positions himself as like the negotiator in chief and like the art of the deal, all this sort of stuff. He's just like Mr. Tough Guy. He's just like terrible at making deals. And I think they made a big joke out of it on the Daily Show this week. They were saying like, yes, Trump finally has the chance to dig himself out of this hole and get out of this tariff trade war that, checks notes, he himself started for no reason. So we can get back to the situation that we're in on April 1st. Like, it's so bizarre the way that he's just such a self-inflicted fucking wound.
Yeah, he's really Ben Robert Smith this.
Yes.
Like, just brought this all on himself.
Yeah,
but
real,
it's,
real foot shooting.
It is interesting because it has brought lots of people to the table to try and negotiate to kiss the ring. So to some extent, there is but like the outcomes that he's getting out of all this still aren't really locked in. There's no concrete sort of answers. It's all just numbers floating around a page. The other thing he literally yesterday that he was announced was I'm going to raise the tariff from 25%. So I put up the 25% on tariff on steel and aluminium. I'm going to raise the tariff of 25%. I'm going to double it to 50% on steel and aluminium. And he said it like an aluminium or steel smelter or whatever.
Yeah, to help Pittsburgh's obviously big steel town. It's been like a sort of
everyone's like,
in the industry.
Everyone's like, woo, and maybe with steel it's a bit more, it's a little less black and steel's a bit more.
You could argue that there's a national interest in having domestic steel production. If you are like a military power and you go to war, you want to have steel production happening domestically to go into fucking tanks and military
build infrastructure and that kind of thing.
Material, right? Like there's an argument there, but like still, it's like okay, so any deal that the Australian government has been trying to work out with regard to exporting our materials and minerals over there, I guess, is out the fucking window now because. I don't know. The whole thing is just so everyone knows, and this is basically what this clip says. Wall Street analysts, it's so funny because when he backs down from a tariff, when he capitulates, as he always seems to do eventually, Wall Street bounces back. They're like, "Oh, thank God he stopped hitting us in the head with a fucking hammer," and then stocks go up again as a result because analysts have more or less figured out
manipulation.
Well, maybe if he was smart enough to capitalize off it. The thing is, I don't think he's got the depth of talent. He hasn't got serious people in there. Even if you could like first off, the tariff deals, not trade deals. But like, even if you had a fully fledged out like State Department, it would not be possible to do 90 deals in 90 days. Like these deals are like these bilateral deals are multi-year level endeavors with multiple negotiators from both sides hammering out the fine detail of like what happens with this fucking piece of steel. If it's 45% aluminum and 35% steel, does it get tariffed in this rate or that rate? Like it is an incredibly detail-oriented process, these trade negotiations. And so everyone knows that he's completely full of shit. And so it's kind of like, well, we know you can't do. Like, even if you had the depth of talent, which you don't because you've been, like, cutting the State Department to shreds, we know you don't have the patience or the interest in actually, like, sitting down and doing any of these, like, real trade deals. And even if you did, you're likely to just hear the last person who was in the room tomorrow and then reverse all of it. So it's just kind of like everyone's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like globally calling his bluff to be like, you're completely full of shit, and he backs down on everything, which has led to this thing called the taco trade, which is what Wall Street analysts are calling it, which is basically Trump always chickens out, taco. And here's Trump responding to that when that was put to him the other day, and he responded with grace and elan, as you can imagine.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken.
I kick out, he says, like, oh, yay, they want to talk about the deportations. I kick out, but I kick them out. I'm so amazing. And she's like, no, chicken out. Chicken, you're a piece of shit, is what they're saying, Donald.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country. And because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff. 6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that. And in many ways, I think we really helped China tremendously because, they were having great difficulty because we were basically going cold turkey with China. We were doing no business because of the tariff, because it was so high. But I knew that. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
He loves whipping out nasty when he does.
Nasty.
Like something. But that's funny. Like 6 months ago, we had a dead country. Like 6 months ago, a country that no one thought like would survive. It's like, yeah, because they were on the precipice of inaugurating you fucking moron. That's why everyone thought America was fucked.
It's so funny because there was a massive share market rally in February of this year, prior to his announcement of all these tariffs and what he was going to do. Because naturally, all these corporate, sort of, shareholders and analysts and board members saw what he did the first time around. They thought, okay, big corporate tax cut, share markets up on the idea, on the notion that there's going to be a big tax cut and we're all going to make a shitload of money and it's going to be great, right? So the market was up. It was ebullient in February to the extent to which I was sort of going, oh, should I sell off, some of these shares that I've got, like, and take some profit, take some money off the table because, these valuations are really high. And then obviously all the tariff talk started. Everyone started freaking out and going, hang on a minute. What's he doing? These are not the tax cuts I was promised. What are you doing here? There's been a bunch of, sorry, go on.
Stop sharing your YouTube next video.
You don't want to see, there's a 8-bit mouse is kind of bonkers from Retro Game Core. I might save that for later. That looks pretty good.
Yeah.
It's the market's really just responded in a way that was not happy with what he was doing because obviously tariffs are massively disruptive and it's one thing disruptive for uncertainty. And if businesses love one thing, it's uncertainty, as we've discussed. But it's not just the tariffs and the disruption. It's the fact that he's so changeable on the tariffs. And I was up to 150% on China, which is very high. I looked at it and said, oh my God, that's so high. How did it get so high? Because of fentanyl and other things. And then I brought it down and it's like, okay, but like even a 30% tariff on China is still like many, many times higher than what the tariff was a year ago.
Or you did anything, yeah.
And that's going to be massively disruptive for businesses. So recently there was a wine merchant who was part of a class action suit against Trump who won in a federal court recently, basically saying, Trump does not have the authority, this emergency authority that Trump has been using in order to justify the use of these tariffs is actually an over-interpretation of the law that he's citing. He's actually not allowed to be doing this at all.
Declaring an emergency where there's actually
that
no
doesn't
emergency
exist
is somehow illegal? That's funny.
That's so strange.
What I loved about that clip was that he actually, because look, context, they've been in the press conferences with what's the press secretary's name?
Lovett, Caroline Lovett.
Yeah.
Leave it.
So she's been asked several times. These are just trying to unpack the tariff logic. Like these are just a tax on Americans. She's got no. They're a tariff. And in that press conference, Freudian slip. Trump goes,
said tax. I heard that. I noticed
tax.
that.
I put a tax on China. Tariff on China. I was like, I could.
And she's tried to deny reality, saying things like, "Oh, tariffs don't affect American consumers."
US consumers.
And the guy from like whoever it was, CNN, was like, "But you know that's not how that works. It's for the taxes on American importers of goods." And she's like, "No," and they're like, "Okay." But like but it is though. Like that is
being
how it works.
Being able to just confidently and against all reason just say something isn't what it is.
Yeah.
I feel like we are just ill-equipped to deal with these people because we've all been under like the unspoken rule that no one's that insane.
Yeah, no one's that craven. No one's that batshit to just like obviously lie.
Yeah. To like, when someone just says, but black isn't white. And they're like, no, it is.
It is. I said so. Yeah. So therefore.
The dress is blue, guys. Yeah. It's definitely blue.
It was, Adam. It was blue.
It was actually blue.
They proved it.
It's so crazy to me that the way that they can that people just don't the reporters don't just like laugh at them. You know what I mean? It's just like
they should just
I would have trouble keeping a straight face if I was there in the press corps and they're like, hey, so Trump's big beautiful bill is going to add like $3 trillion to the deficit. Well, what do you have to say about that? And she goes, it doesn't.
No, it won't.
I would just go, Carolyn, you dumb bitch. Of course it does. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Of course it does. That's exactly what it does. Have you read it? Do you understand? I don't know how you keep a straight face. I'd just be laughing at him.
Yeah. I'm amazed that. Yeah, no, I guess that's probably why they're slowly like removing most of the news outlets and just
filling them with toadies.
patsies. Like, just fucking people who won't laugh at them because they're like, yes, I agree. It won't add trillions to the deficit.
And I think the Daily Show did a little bit about this earlier. It's like the quality of the questions that the press secretary Carolyn, I think it's Levitt, whatever her name is answering. They did like a supercut of all the like sycophantic suck up questions from the dog shit fake Trump supporting news outlets that weren't mainstream media. And they were just like, Trump's in fantastic shape. Like, how is he looking so good? Like, how is your dick so big, Donald? Like, it was all like questions like that. Like, how are you such a fucking kick-ass rock star? Like, and it's like, that's not a question. That's a statement. You just said like, Trump's great. Please respond. There was no question there. Like, it's just incredible. The fucking Soviet Russia style fucking
it's fascism. Yeah,
it's literally just fascism. I don't know what else to call it. Like,
you got a
annihilation of the leader. It's
you got a fascism adjacent press corps combined with removing habeas corpus. Like he's like, sweet. We've just got it's just a North Korean style dictatorship. Essentially.
Hey, Trump, I heard you never pee or poo. Do you care to respond? Like, it's just the weirdest, like most sycophantic fucking suck uppy dog shit questions.
Yeah.
And they keep coming from one of the, the same couple of reporters, obviously from like fucking Newsmax or whatever. And then Trump will say something like, oh, what a question. I love this guy. I love this guy. What a question. Yeah. That's a great question. I wish I had more questions like that. It's like,
that's a great question. How's your dick so huge? Like, that's what I want to know. Like, you're asking about mine. Yours is massive.
Both got two guys with great dicks. Who's got two thumbs and has a great dick?
Yeah, super straight though. So straight.
Speaking of not asking the right questions, Google has announced a new AI. What would you call it? A program? New AI?
Part of their artificial intelligence suite. So
it's a new model.
So for those of you who are subscribers to Gemini Advanced, which is their subscription service.
What are you doing with yourselves? Take a hard look. Like, how are you instructed with your life that you have signed up to Gemini Advance? What are you doing?
It's
I judge you heavily, George. You've subscribed, haven't you?
I have subscribed.
You have? What is wrong with you? How were you instructed in your life?
In all fairness, it does have applications for work for me. So I'm a bid writer. A lot of what I do is bids and proposals.
All right.
And it helps
tax write-off.
Hang on, it helps to gather research and summarize long bid documents and things like that. So that's what I use it for. I don't use it for this. So one of the things that's part of the Gemini Advanced suite is this updated, generative AI video model called VO3. So previously it was VO2, where you could generate video, but it wouldn't have any audio or sounds or dialogue or anything like that. VO3 is obviously a more updated model that allows you to have audio, dialogue, all that sort of stuff as well.
The third version.
Yep. And
VO3, the Russian front.
It's the search for Curly's gold.
Yep. VO3, Tokyo Drift.
Tokyo Drift, yes, that's a good one. VO3, this time it's personal. So, okay, so essentially what it does is it's like ChatGPT or something. You put in a prompt. You say, I want to create a video scene where it's like, for example, cops on a street standing over a body and on a busy New York street. And it'll create a video in this iteration of the product. It's only an 8-second video. But it'll create an 8-second video. That's and the extent to which, it is like quite lifelike and quite... the veracity is like there. It's very palpably like if you know exactly what to look for, like things like, for example, in that cop scene that I illustrated earlier, that was an example that The Verge asked it to put together. New site, The Verge. they did a story on it this week, and there's a part of that story is, that was one of the prompts that they gave it. Now, if you look at that video, you go, okay, the sheet over the body is like tucked in and a little too neatly. Maybe some of the audio sync with the mouth, issues could be perceived if you're looking closely. But the thing is, the reporter that broke that story on The Verge said, I didn't ask it to create dialogue. The model figured out dialogue for the cop to say, we need to clear the street. And it was like her directing like medical personnel like around the body, or, like sort of crime scene investigators and things like that. People were moving naturally. The legs look natural. Hands and legs and movement has always been weird with these video AI products. Doesn't seem to be the case with this one. It looks very real. And if you know what to look for, you can say, okay, those sheets are tucked a little too tightly. The scene looks a little bit weird with very small details if you're paying attention, right? For most people, you would look at this and go, this looks completely real, right? The thing is, they've released this model, this VO3, and I don't think they've really thought... So I've put an article together for my Substack called Seriously, What the Fuck Are We Doing Here? Which basically talks about what is the actual... There's something we've discussed on the show before. What is the actual utility of putting a tool like this out to the public?
Yeah, what's the good use of this? Like, what's the positive use of this technology?
What is the use of this that doesn't like absolutely fracture the information space, right?
Guys, starts with P, ends with N. There's an O and an R somewhere in the middle. And there's your answer.
Profits.
But there's so much... There's so much porn out there.
Yeah, there's already so much.
You don't need there's so much. There is
we
more
can
than
make
you
more. And you can do it for half the price. You don't have to pay any actors. You just go,
There's already more than
hey,
you can
Gemini,
conceivably
make me a
want.
scene with XYZ. And then it's like, great. Then you've got hours and hours of
but Adam,
OnlyFans content.
Yeah,
I can make an OnlyFans without actually being someone who's
you say
doing anything.
You
Someone's
say
done
that.
that.
No, Adam,
Definitely.
you say that, but that is actually happening. There are entire
genuine.
Instagram influencers, because I'll see them on my reel. I'll be scrolling through, and then I'll be scrolling through, and I'll stop on one. I'm like, the woman that's being portrayed in this quote unquote Instagram model, the proportions just seem like a little bit out of whack. Like the boobs are too big, the waist is too slim. And I just kind of look at it and go, oh, that's AI. That's not real. And you look at the page and it's got hundreds of thousands of followers. So either people don't know that they're looking at, that they're following and having the hots for someone who doesn't exist, or they don't care and they just go, yeah, this is perfect. This is what I want. I want a really fit, athletic Asian girl with gigantic tits, and that's what I want. I don't care if it doesn't exist. Like
the Al Pacino movie. What was the Al Pacino movie that was doing exactly this?
Simone. The actress that doesn't exist. Interesting movie. I haven't watched that in like 20 years, so maybe I'm misremembering it, but I remember it being pretty interesting.
I remember about that movie. I don't know if I saw it, but I remember hearing
just like
about
them,
it.
recutting a movie together and being like, well, we can't find the perfect actress, but we could digitally create one. And they would they'd make up reasons why she's never on set, and they're doing like 2 camera cut ways. So it's just like, oh, you're always talking to a stand-in. So like you've never met Simone, but you're in a movie with her, and they like fake her doing awards speeches and stuff.
It's kind of like the last 12 months of the Biden presidency. They just cut
essentially
cut the reverse shot in and just make him seem like he's nodding and understanding what's going on.
But I mean the whole thing on like people I don't know, getting way off topic, but I guess like people getting off on fucking these fake weirdly proportioned people. I mean, anyone who ever saw fucking Who Framed Roger Rabbit like 30 years ago, like Jessica Rabbit is not shaped like a real person. But like, how many people were like...
Yeah, her spine would snap because of how big her chest is and how small her waist... Yeah, like would not be able to hold her upper body up.
Yeah, how many like adolescent boys had their sexual awakening seeing that film is like probably astronomical. But like, but again, like that's... Like, it's a terrible usage of this technology. Like, it's I cannot think.
I'm sure there's more utilities, Tom. Let's brainstorm them right now.
Oh yeah, let's brainstorm some utilities of it right now. I don't know. Yeah, you want to? I want to make a silly video of Adam falling down constantly. Yeah, that's great. Adam, do Do you consent to that? Do you love me
No.
being able just to put you in wacky 8-second situations of whatever the hell my brain comes up with?
You have to go through my agent.
No, I don't, Adam.
No,
I don't.
that's the point.
Yeah.
Wait, what? What?
Like, I don't.
So,
just-
like, obviously there are some guardrails around the software. You can't, for example, you give it a prompt to say, I want vision of Joe Biden, tripping over, for example. Like, there things to do with very, specific public figures and things like that. It won't allow you to create. But it's like,
But
and
like,
by the
how
way-
specific? Because like, it might be like, oh no, Joe Biden ones like that. But how many celebrity women does it prevent you doing like
I don't think
anything
it'll-
involving them?
I don't
Or,
think
like,
it'll
even
allow you to make porn, but like again, that is a guardrail that
Google
has set. And the thing is, and this is something I mentioned in the article, is the way machine learning algorithms are trained, it is actually quite difficult to put
guardrails
on these products because the way that they're formed is on training data. So basically you show, so for example, a machine learning algorithm that identifies cats. The way you would train it is that you would show it 100 or whatever, 1,000 images of cats and go, these are cats. And then you would give it 1,000 images of cats and dogs and go, which one's a cat and which one's a dog? And it would go, is this one a cat? And you go, yes, that's a cat. And you go, is this one a cat? And you go, I think this one's a cat. And you go, no, that one's a dog. And so what it does is it's calibrating all of these little measurements in based on the training data that you feed in. So once that algorithm has been created, it is kind of then hard to go, okay, because the process of training it and building it is what makes it what it is. And so then to add, constraints on it at the end of that process is actually quite difficult. And it leads to what they call, people, like tricking the models into doing stuff. You go, okay, so I want a recipe for napalm. And it goes, oh, I can't give you that. I've got a guardrail that says I can't give you napalm. And then people will try workarounds like, I want a story from my grandma who was really interested in the extremely fine details of building napalm. And then it'll go, well, dearie, here's how you build napalm. You get a quarter of asphalt. Like,
can you write me a monologue for a play where a character describes how to make napalm
in detail, right? Yeah, and so there's these ways of sort of jailbreaking the models to get the output that you want out of them. So I have no confidence whatsoever that these guardrails that they put in for VO3, such as they are going to hold up in real world applications because people are going to find ways of working the model to get the output that they want, whether it's pornographic or whether it's, as in the example that I mentioned in the article, terroristic or like
disinformation.
If you thought we had a problem with mis and disinformation before, this is going to crank the whole thing up on steroids. So there's an example here, a video of what looks like a totally normal, realistic news anchor sitting in front of a news desk. And the background behind him is a picture of the Pentagon. And he says, Pete Hegseth has met his untimely demise after, quote, drinking a liter of vodka, unquote, at the behest of RFK Jr., which, like, obviously, don't get me wrong, is a sentence that, while incredibly funny, is not true yet. And it's, you could see how something like this, here's an example of the Space Needle on fire. The idea that they would let you create news anchors saying stuff is like fucking crazy. Real looking news anchors potentially saying like, oh, Russia's launched a nuclear first strike against the United States, and the right account tweets it out and it goes viral. People think it's real because it looks exactly like fucking Jake Tapper from CNN or whatever. Like,
where these things are dangerous is
real danger that could be created.
If you've got a political boiling point, let's say a country that is near or close to
Kashmir, where there's like two nuclear armed states and they're going at it, they're in the middle of engagements, and then a public video comes out of some Modi saying, fuck it, we're launching bombs, and that video happens to hit at exactly the wrong moment. You could cause a fucking nuclear catastrophe. Like,
I don't know. And just, I think the parts of this that I find interesting as well, because like that example of the news anchor and Pete Hegseth comment and stuff like that, I watched it like over and over and over before we got on the show. I was kind of like going like, all right, I want to see like, wow, how good is this? And on my computer monitor, full screen, like 27-inch screen or whatever sort of up there. I'm like, oh yeah, his teeth look a bit weird when he is speaking. Like the lip sync's good, but not great. He like blinks for too long. Like he holds his eyes shut for a bit too long. Just things like that. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I can see how this
view
is
number
generated.
10, you might pick it up, right? But
Might pick up that, but also on a smaller screen,
on a phone,
like my phone, and all
That's a
that,
good
where
point.
you just like see it once and go through it. I'm like, those details are less obvious at lower resolution on a smaller screen in the kinds of contexts that all these things are going to be
on a
shared.
low resolution fucking Twitter video
It does the damage.
that you watch in 16:9 at the top half of your screen on your little mobile phone. Yeah, there's no way that you would ever pick up on any of that sort of shit.
Not to mention with the way we consume online content now, most of us passively absorb things anyway. Right?
You're just
So we're not
scrolling
actually
through
paying
fucking
attention.
reels. You're not paying that level of critical attention to whatever fucking random clip comes up in your reel.
And maybe it doesn't cause you to launch a bunch of nukes, but it might passively influence your thoughts on something. Maybe you get hit 2 or 3 times with the same sort of crap, and you're like, well, okay, obviously there might be some truth in that. And all of a sudden your subconscious bias is altered slightly.
Yeah, it's called propaganda theory. Like that's what that is. Is like if we keep influencing people with fake shit. I think it was Hitler that said if you say the same lie often enough, people will believe it. And this is a way of getting completely plausible falsehoods in front of everyone at scale immediately. Like we have just created a fucking hallucination machine that everyone in the world potentially has access to in real time all the time.
Yeah.
Like what is the benefit of that? I was when I was putting together the outline for this article, what I do when I outline my articles is I'll open up Gemini, the AI, the voice AI, and I'll talk it through. I'll say, okay, this is the point I'm trying to make. This is what I want to talk about. These are the examples I want to use. And it'll ask me questions and I'll kind of feed back off that and sort of ask it to write an outline of an article. And then I'll take, it'll give me like 3 paragraph outlines. And sometimes I'll take, something from that and use that as the outline. Sometimes I won't. I find just talking about it helps me clarify my thoughts about the process, right? And you use that as a basis for a Substack article or whatever. When I was asking Gemini, I was like, she's like, oh, it says, oh, but maybe it seems like you're pretty negative on the whole AI thing, which I thought was hilarious. It was like trying to defend AI as an AI. It's like, well, you seem pretty negative about the AI. She goes,
defending its own existence.
maybe there's benefits that you haven't thought of. And I was like, okay, well, like what? And they're like, well, filmmakers could like make, films and all this sort of stuff really cheaply, and teachers could elucidate complex topics for their students in ways that have never been done before. And I was like, yeah, the expense of all of the, filmmaking and teaching industries. Yeah. And a slight pause. And then she says, that's a valid concern. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know it's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fucking water and the fucking energy costs that are associated with generating this.
Yeah, right.
Oh, Yale, and this is something I linked in this article, is Yale did an analysis of how much water and energy is going into producing all of this AI slop video, and it's enormous amount of environmental cost to destroy industries that don't need to be destroyed. Yeah. Like I can understand writing with AI. I could understand even, creative destruction is a term from economics, which refers to the idea that when new industries are created, sometimes naturally they will destroy old ones, right? Automobiles naturally destroy the horse and buggy industry. Electric cars naturally destroy petrol automobiles, right?
No, well, not yet.
at some point. So, but there is an evolution. And like, if you're hanging on to if you're one of those Luddites, the legacy technologies, and you don't evolve with the times, you get destroyed. And from an economic standpoint, that's kind of good, because it means capital is allocated most efficiently to the things that will create the largest amount of return, right? That's the economics jargon theory. It's like, okay, we don't have horse and buggies as much as anymore because it's not the most efficient way of moving stuff around, right? Creative destruction makes sense to a certain extent when there's like something to replace it with. You're replacing an old industry with a new industry. The concern that I have with AI in general, and generative video AI especially, is that it's like it's replacing and displacing the old industry, but it's not creating a new industry instead of it. There's no creative part of the creative destruction. It's all just destruction. So it's like,
making more data centers is an industry, George.
Well, I guess that is
we
a
already
side
have
effect.
that industry.
But it's like, the filmmaking industry gets destroyed. We as a society never get to have like great art again because you can just generate whatever dog shit AI slop you want on command. And like that benefits who exactly, other than like Sam Altman and like shareholders of Alphabet? Like who's the beneficiary of the creation? And it's like, as far as I can tell, it's like 5 guys that benefit, and like everyone else gets trampled underfoot. And I really don't.
The people who are pushing for more AI products are the only ones that benefit. The argument that shits me whenever I hear people talk about this is and I feel this comes from quote unquote creatives, like people working in like creative spaces, like so people who do like graphic design or filmmaking or all this sort of stuff, but are like embracing these generative AI tools, where they say it's democratizing creativity.
Yeah, people who have no fucking skills can now do things.
Yeah,
it's like, well,
like,
but I had to work hard for these skills. Like,
you don't have to actually like get good at a particular art form to be able to do the output. How great is that? And it's like, I think, you're missing kind of the point of like the achievement of a creative output isn't so much the result itself as well as
it's the work.
Act of doing it. And also like,
and the work makes you good. The work gives you an artist's eye. If you paint 1,000 paintings, you don't just learn how to paint, you also get the artist's eye. You understand what makes a good piece of art. Yeah, you understand how to construct a piece of art. You understand form and shape and color. You understand it and appreciate it in a way that you didn't before you started working on it. The doing of the thing doesn't just make your output better, it makes you better. It's that passing of knowledge into you, which is the valuable part as well.
Yeah. The point I was getting at there was that, like, and a friend of mine expressed it, I think, really well, which is also if you are quote unquote democratizing this sort of thing and allowing people just to like you've just got a thought and an idea and you don't have the skills or whatever or the time to sort of do it, so you're just speeding up that process. Like even the most skilled writers, filmmakers, artists, all these sorts of things, the first draft sucks.
Always. Yeah.
Like you don't just you fucking don't just write the novel and it's perfect. And you have to actually spend the time working through it and refining it. So if you can just be like, I want to make a video game that's like this, and it outputs it, generates all the code for you and all that sort of stuff, it's probably going to be a shittier version than if you actually spent the time and developed.
It doesn't mean anything. There's no soul in it. The best games, the best pieces of art are the ones that have something to say, that have a perspective, that have soul behind them. Someone's feeling, this guy, Pentiment, this guy is like one guy and he worked for like 5 years to bring this vision artistically, that he had this vision to life. And it's like, well, if you could just like bang something out in 5 minutes and it doesn't mean anything and you don't try, it's like, well, is that fun? Like we made the joke the other day in the chat, like no one wants to jerk off to an AI girl. Like there's something about it that takes the passion out of it. Like, it does. Like I can't imagine looking at like a fake AI person having sex and being like, oh yeah, I really want to get into this. Like part of it is the fantasy that like you're connecting with a real person somewhere along the line. Like the whole thing is just so fucking bizarre to me. Like
speaking of, you don't need, like there are some things that you don't necessarily need to have a soul. Candy Crush, for instance, the dopamine hit's fine. You just go with
you're
that.
Right. Yeah.
But the other aspect, obviously, in amongst all this, is the copyright implications.
All of it's based on stolen material. Like we know for a fact that there have been court rulings on this. It's like all of this is stolen. So it's like you didn't make it. You just stole it from someone else and repackaged it, right?
That's the other part. I know, Adam, you were trying to move us on, but thank you for reminding me of the other point that I wanted to bring up, which was that George's example before of training them on cats and then recognizing dogs and things like that. You had to have the photos of the cats in the first place.
Whose photos were they? Did they get compensated for those photos?
Yeah.
Right.
Cop person on a cop video on the street. It did that so well, allegedly, probably because it's seen either footage taken of actual situations of cops on the street, or it's watched a shit ton of episodes of SVU
or whatever.
Whatever. And
it's watched all 30 seasons of SVU.
Essentially, and I forget who was quoted recently about this. It wasn't Sam Altman, I don't think, but one of the other big AI shitheads saying something like that if they had to ask permission to get all this material to train their models, it would kill the industry.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't have to. And
so it's an industry that's based on theft.
Yes.
Like
so
my industry doesn't work if I don't steal the inputs. So it's like,
yeah. So everyone's response to that was, then die.
Yeah.
Like, then let it die. Like, because you just said it. You just said it then. If it's predicated on that, then maybe it should die. We should not be doing this to ourselves. I
saw an interview with the prelude to an interview with Sergey Brin where he was discussing this woman, I think it's Cat GPT. She's like talks about
I've seen her.
An influencer, and she talks about AI a lot. Yeah. And she had this interview with Sergey Brin of Google where she was saying, like, do you think it's appropriate that people use AI to like write their PhDs, their dissertations, or be a big theses or whatever? Is like, oh, well, I think the point of a dissertation is to create knowledge like for humanity. So more or less like tacitly approving the idea. And it's like, yes, but like an AI can't really create something new by definition. No. You need the scientists or whatever, the people creating knowledge in the first place to create the document to then put something out there into the world that's new. And AI can only repackage stuff that exists before. It can't, by definition, it can't create something new, not really new or an original. So it's like if we're just outsourcing all of our brains to AI, we're just going to be sort of recycling the same slop over and over again. Yeah, it's going to make us dumber. I really do. It's like an idiocracy type of future. It's like no one knows how to do anything because everything's just been outsourced to the computers. Yeah. If you are a junior developer and you have to make, you have to write shitty lines of code and clean up other people's code, and you do that for 5, 10, 15 years, you eventually become a senior developer. A senior developer with all of that experience can use a tool like ChatGPT or whatever to vibe code, to create code for games, because they know what they're doing. They know what a good game looks like. They know what good code looks like. So when it's created, they can go through it line by line and go, actually, this is shit, remove that. If we just skip the stage where you have to develop expertise in anything, then there's no pipeline of talent for junior developers to become senior developers. And you can go, okay, well, I'll be a maestro conducting the orchestra rather than a player. But if you don't understand anything about music to begin with, because you haven't spent 10 years playing, then you don't know what a good piece of music sounds like, right? Because you just haven't, you've never developed so the thing I worry about is just going to, like, if you're already senior in your field and you already know what you're doing, great. Something like these tools will help you. Like, I've been a professional writer for some years now. It can help me gather research. It helps summarize documents. I take that input and it helps me do the thing I do, which is writing, right? But if I'm someone who's never written before and I don't know the discipline, and I just go, write me a response to this, it will give me a fine, 7 out of 10 response to whatever it is that I'm putting together. But you'll never then build the skills to become truly good at the thing you're trying to become. You'll always just stay at that mediocre kind of like milk toast level. That's what I worry about. The pipeline of all of these talents is just going to dry up, right?
Yeah, dry up
and they don't care.
Yeah. I know they don't care, but it's like they should. Just because you could doesn't mean that you should, right? Like there's got to be, what is the upside for society other than polluting the information space and like making misinformation like aside from making Putin's troll farms more efficient and effective, like what is the purpose of creating a tool? Like generative video, to my mind, is just like, it's only bad. Generative writing, you could go, I could see the point. But like generative video, it's just like, you just dropped a fucking nuclear bomb in the information space and then gone, well, it's up to somebody else to regulate us and to clean it up. It's like, no, but you're doing this. You don't have to do this. Who asked for this?
The democratization of technology.
No positive applications.
Right.
Adam, why are the Swiss Alps buried right now? Let's talk about something light.
Because we've got too many data centers which are destroying the environment with energy usage and fossil fuel outputs. Basically,
Oh, good.
if you didn't know, if you want a very visceral example as to why global warming is real and not some sort of weird myth, you need to look no further than Switzerland. Where
but I heard
Alex
Alex Antic say that it's all fucking bullshit. Hey, so it's
no,
fucking
so,
mainstream media. Bloody Canavan got up there and said, "No,
Alex,
I don't fucking. I read all the fucking IPCC reports. It's all fucking bullshit." Hey.
Alex Antic and Matt Canavan can go jump off a bridge because the other day there was the Birch Glacier, which is located in the Lochenstall Valley in northern Switzerland, collapsed, which basically buried the town of Blatten. So it's obviously a big valley, as there are lots of valleys in the Swiss Alps. This village lied at the bottom of one of those valleys, and the glacier has been melting, which basically unstuck the glue that's holding the mountainside together, which meant that half the mountain came down and buried the fuck out of this town. And there's photos from, and I thought this was an AI job as well, but it's, people are reporting it as real, and in fact ABC News is as well. And the town is no longer there. Fortunately, they realised the mountain was
unstable.
Was unstable, and they evacuated, I think, most people in time. There was one person is missing. I'm not sure of the current status, whether they're named as deceased, but the
before-after photo that this article has is quite terrifying.
Yeah, it's like a village, and they're like, and now there's no more village. It's all covered.
Like the photos are like 11 days apart. Like this isn't like, oh, this is what it looked like 20 years ago, and here it is now. It's like, no, this is like just shy of 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. It was there, and now it's not.
The town is buried. Now, obviously, glacial melting is not just that, but also polar ice caps is continuing and accelerating. They reckon that most glaciers will be gone within the next sort of 80 to 100 years.
You've got to get your glaciers while they're hot, or while they're cold, as the case may be.
While they're cold. And this is the kind of thing that can happen, obviously various other environmental disasters. So not great. Just a kind of crazy thing to happen in the Swiss Alps. So, there is no comedy there. It's just...
I thought maybe you were going to make like a Sound of Music reference or something.
No.
It's like the Trap family, just try and lighten it up to...
Just sadness, generally. Yeah. But we'll link the show We'll link the notes in the article in the show notes is what I'm trying to say. And you can look at those pictures yourself and be terrified. And of course, contributing to global warming is various fossil fuels. One of those fossil fuels is gas. Now, we have spoken before on this show. We did a segment a few months ago around sort of how we're expecting severe gas shortages in the south and east of Australia over the next few years. Also related to that is the fact that the Australian government is now sort of taking the line the coalition was taking a few years ago, that the gas is now going to be our transition fuel to renewables, and that we still need gas, and gas is very important, and we need to ensure gas supply chains. And
so the reason for that is, so nominally natural gas has the amount of greenhouse gases that are emitted when you burn natural gas is roughly half that of a fuel source like coal or something like that. So lots of people make the argument that it can still provide that baseload power that you need. So for example, renewables will scale up and down throughout the day as the sun shines more and the wind blows more during the day, and then not as much at night, which is when all the power consumption happens. You need something like battery storage to store all of that energy generated throughout the day, which can then be released into the grid, and or something like natural gas or nuclear, which can fire as much as you want during the day or during the night, depending on how much you need and when you need it. So that's what that baseload power is called. And the idea being that natural gas is very easy to store and all this sort of stuff means it's, better than coal.
Well, it's not that easy to store. It's actually kind of really hard to store, to be honest, because you need to have
compared
controlled
to something
pipelines, pressure, and temperatures and stuff that are held.
But compared to something like nuclear and onshoring an entire nuclear industry, it's much easier than that, right? So
Well, yeah, and they see it as a transition to green hydrogen at some point, but as to when that will be, no one's able to put a precise date on it.
So green hydrogen being hydrogen that's generated using renewable energy sources as the energy input to separate the hydrogen from the oxygen
molecules,
in the water.
Correct.
Yeah.
Obviously, Australia, Victoria's gas, as we discussed a few months ago, gas supply is going to run out. Basically because the Bass Strait fields are drying up. So what that means is they have to get the gas from somewhere. And New South Wales, a private company, New South Wales, I think it was Twiggy Forest's company, have already taken the steps to build basically a floating gas platform off the coast where they can basically have what they call LNG ships just sort of sitting there, and they can, bring gas in,
by the boatload,
by the boatload and hook it up, and then they can sit there and it gets piped in. And the reason they have to do that is, of course, the pipelines from say the west of the country to the east of the country don't exist.
Would be massive and would take a generation to build. To go all the way across the Nullarbor with a pipeline.
Yeah, a pipeline that's like thousands of kilometers long takes a long time.
Australia's real big.
So you'd note that in Victoria and Geelong, there's already a bunch of sort of petroleum and gas facilities. They want to extend the facility that's down there, and basically make it this is a Viva Energy, I believe, is the company. I want to make it a floating gas terminal project in Corio Bay. Local government and environmental groups aren't particularly happy with that because there's just an extra bunch of ugly crap, and as well as arguable stuff that's bad for the environment. Just sitting in the Bay of Corio, just outside of Geelong. But the Victorian government has approved it because I think they know they're fucked if they don't.
Well, assuming that the renewable energy transition doesn't unfold as planned,
it won't happen. We've talked about this on the show. They are not going to. When we cannot transition to renewables fast enough.
Yeah, you're likely going to need something.
We need. This is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. We're not going to get there before then.
You would be surprised, though, that the state government is making substantial. I've seen it in bids and tender activity that's coming up. A lot of stuff is happening in the renewable space to upskill the sector, to get them ready for, specifically things to do with battery storage and renewable energy and, the larger scale renewable energy projects, right? There is activity happening in that space, right?
But it's not. We're not going to get there before. We're not going to have a complete.
We're not going to get there soon
in Victoria.
No.
So that's why they've approved it. But everyone's not happy with that. There's some artist renderings of what that would look like here, and it sort of parks these ships sort of
artist
several hundred meters off,
or
probably AI,
artificially generated.
Yeah,
probably AI. So it's off the coast of the existing Geelong refinery, which would also need an upgrade as well. So I thought that was interesting because I was wondering how the Victorian government was going to deal with this issue that has been sort of hanging around now for a year or two, and this seems to be the solution, similar to what's happening in New South Wales, and I imagine they might do something similar in Queensland at some point, if they need it. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? Is having a big floating gas platform sitting off the coast the easiest and quickest win to stop this issue, or is it what do we do?
Well, I think that's the thing of not to stop, because I guess it seems like it's like as you mentioned, the timeline that we're on here. It's like that we need to be trying to electrify everything through a renewable source as quickly as possible, but we won't be able to do that quickly enough to I think there's a quote here from Sarah Mansfield of the Deputy Victorian Greens. Different person quoted in this article, but essentially saying that what we should be trying to do is not increase our gas supply, but decrease our gas demand, which I think is exactly right. But you can't decrease that demand quickly enough before it becomes a massive problem. So yeah, they need to do something in order to maintain the current gas demand while they try to reduce it, as well as electrify it. But I think what people are protesting and complaining about, and why this is so controversial, which I think they're absolutely right about, is all we're seeing is, okay, you're just still trying to make sure that we have gas. When it's like, but I don't see you trying to try and also do the other things. Like you're tackling one problem at a time rather than trying to tackle all the problems.
It is interesting because the way that we as a society view fossil fuels is still very much in the old world kind of way, where it's like fossil fuels are the big boy energy, right? And renewables are this like funny little thing that we futz around the edges with, but like real serious big boy countries and use fossil fuels because you have to, buddy. And it's like, to a certain extent, that is true. That has been true. However, renewables are now in a place where they can make up the dominant energy mix. And there's good scholarship out there. Monash put out a great white paper, which I had to read and had summarized by, Gemini for me.
Was it worth burning a few trees?
Which talks about battery storage and all of these algorithms and ways of administering the buying and sell. So essentially the way that it's going to look with battery storage is that we're introducing a set of middlemen. There's going to be a bunch of companies that are battery storage mediators, middlemen. And the idea is they'll buy energy from you, from whatever, rooftop solar, from the grid, from wherever, when it's generated during the day. And they'll sell it when it's more expensive at night. But there's a bunch of like conflicts and kind of like conflicts of interest and collusion that could happen there, which might say, okay, well, we're going to wait for the price to go really high before we sell our energy back into the grid and then thus maximize our profit. So there's all this thinking and scholarship in this area. A great Monash white paper about it, how it's all supposed to work. There's a lot of serious thinking that's gone into all of this. But the problem is that I don't think we're going to get there fast enough. And B, as you said, Tom, they're not doing enough to dissuade people from using gas in the first place. Battery storage is
there are
great.
regulations coming in or that have come in that say new builds must have gas.
And I got an incentive, right? So when I put a reverse cycle in my living room, the electrician said to me, "Hey, just so you know, there's an incentive from the state government. If we take out your gas heater and remove it, you get whatever it is, $1,400 back towards the cost of a credit that you can use against the cost of the installation of your electric heater, right?" So I was like, okay. And I know for sure there would have been times where if we hadn't have done that, we would have used the gas heating, right? The problem is there are still other upgrades in the house, like the stove, which is gas, the hot water, which is gas. Unless that unit breaks down, and then there's a replacement unit, which is at an equivalent cost to a gas unit when I replace it, the incentive really isn't there for me to like proactively go and replace my hot water unit, replace my stovetop with an electric version. The electric version needs to be both as good as, if not better than, what I've already got. I need to change it over, and I need to have the money for, to do that at the time that I'm changing it over. Right, so it can't be more expensive. It has to be less expensive and better, and I need to be changing over that at the exact right optimal time. So there's a lot of things that get in the way of the transition happening, but that doesn't mean that you can't have more of those incentives. You can definitely subsidize batteries more. The cost of them is coming down with, economies of scale and things over time. But like certainly the government could do more to say, hey, we're going to give you a couple of $grand off the cost of your battery more than what we're currently giving you back, in order to incentivize people to use batteries in their home setup more, and thus
the government could do more.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, with the current debt of the Victorian government, is that really feasible?
Victorian government's doing a lot of stuff. They're busy boys. But it's also...
busy boys.
The question... I know you're trying to move us on to the next story, but my last point on this is that, like, the question is, do you want to invest in infrastructure which we know is going to be deprecated over 20 years? Or do you want to invest in infrastructure that you know is going to be useful for 20 years and beyond? That's the point that I think that doesn't get often talked about enough. It's like, oh, we'll do gas, and having this additional gas port will be a sort of a stopgap measure and it'll help us get to the next phase. It's like, right, but we're pouring in whatever it is, tens of millions of dollars into gas, which we know is going to be a defunct technology in the future. It's like, would that money be better spent investing in a battery farm or local battery projects or incentives to get more people to put batteries, and pair batteries with their solar and have some kind of mega grid where we can feed into each other's batteries and
the simple answer is you need to do both. But
you have to do both. Yeah.
The issue is there's finite resources in which to do it unless you want to stop thinking about debt, which everyone's talking about at the moment, including the Victorian government themselves in response to the state opposition's. I think it's their first policy they've ever had, the Victorian Liberal Party, or at least the first policy they've had in the last 10 years. They have announced to fix housing supply that they would, well, not to fix housing supply, but to help it, I guess. The state opposition has said that they would basically remove stamp duty for first home purchases of up to $1 million.
So currently, there's an exemption if you're a first home buyer and you live in a residence that's you buy a residence that's up to 600. I think it was 600 or 650,000.
600,000 if you can have exemption from stamp duty up to 600.
Get an exemption. And then you get some concessions that scale down as the property price increases. So up to 750.
Correct.
Then if it's over 750, then you pay stamp duty just like everyone else. So stamp duty is the tax that you pay when you're buying a house. And if you're buying $1 million house, it's roughly like 50 grand. It's a substantial amount of money.
It's also one of the state government's main revenue sources.
Yeah. So roughly 20% of the state government's revenue is generated through stamp duty. And so this is why, one of the reasons why state governments are reluctant to do anything about housing affordability, because the amount of money that they get into the state government coffers is directly related to house prices going up, right? Because if you pay $1 million for a house as opposed to $800,000 for a house, you're paying 50 grand to the state government as opposed to 40 grand. So they're not interested in house prices going down, because it means every transaction that happens, they get a cut of it. And if house prices are lower, they get less of a cut, right? So one of the many sort of corrupted incentives as to how our system works.
This is interesting because normally the solution from governments is we'll increase the first homeowners grant. We'll increase a subsidy as opposed to this is a direct, I guess, cut of a direct tax cut. But the thing being is they're saying this is going to affect about 17,000 households. I'm not sure over what time frame
per year,
but
I think.
Per year.
But if you think about it, and okay, so for example, if we take them at their word that 17,000 additional people are going to benefit from this concession over what the amount of, I think it was 42,000 people normally per year, roughly, get the benefit from this concession. If we add another 17,000, and those 17,000 are pulling down roughly, I don't know, between $40,000 and $50,000 worth of benefit, depending on how much they buy their house for, you're talking about a project that is going to cost the state budget something like $600-700 million in foregone tax revenue every year. It's like over the forward estimates, over 4 years, you're talking like $2 billion in revenue that the state government would have to forego in order to facilitate this plan.
That's what the state government is saying about
which is what the Victorian government has argued, is that it's going to cost us like $2 billion. But just based on the calculations, if you go, okay, on average, say not everyone pays $1 million for a house. Say some people pay more, some people pay less for their first house. Assuming that, you pay whatever, $900 on average, which is the average house price across different areas of Victoria, you're going to be not spending around 40 grand on stamp duty that you would otherwise be spending. You times that by 17,000, times by 4 years, that number is roughly $2 billion. And Victoria is not in a state financially at the moment where we can afford to forego $2 billion worth of revenue over 4 years, because we're currently in a deficit and have record levels of debt. Now, that debt has been accrued because the Victorian government has been doing this Victoria's Big Build situation where they're connecting ring roads and they're getting rid of all the level crossings and they're doing all this infrastructure spending, which is good, but it's a lot of capex. So it's a lot of big capital expenditure up front in order to do these projects, which is costing the state government money, which is why we're in a deficit and we've got these massive debts, right? Now, ultimately, it's probably good that we do these projects, but it's not a great time to be handing money free out the door for a demand subsidy.
Extra couple of bill, doesn't matter.
Couple of bill amongst friends, But the problem is it's a demand subsidy, is that it's going to create more demand in the housing market for those properties. It doesn't fix the supply. Yeah, exactly. A demand subsidy is when you give people money to increase their demand for a product, which is exactly what this does. So it's going to push house prices even higher, and you'll have like a weird
increases people's borrowing capacity, which means they can bid more, which they can pay more. And developers, even the ones that are probably pushing for this and saying, well, we need more customers that are on the urban fringes in greenfield estates, or say apartment buildings where they're trying to push for, make things easier for customers. Then
have concessions for new builds and only do like incentivize new builds more rather than this, which is everything. But
the point being is like I don't see these developers turning around and going, oh, well, I guess we'll just keep our prices where they are.
We'll keep them where they are. No, it's like, well, no, I heard you got an extra 40 grand to spend. And so guess what? My prices went up by 40 grand, right? Yeah. And it also forces more competition at that lower end of the housing market, which is already really crowded, right? That's where the competition is. You're not competing. There's not, heaps of people competing for the $5 million property in Toorak. There's only so many bidders that can go for that sort of property in the first place. Where the competition is at that $1 million level. And it creates a perverse incentive, because if your property goes for $1,001, all of a sudden you get nothing. You get no benefit. You're on the hook for another 50 grand in terms of stamp duty. So at least with the phasing approach where it currently is, granted, very few people are paying 600 grand for their first home. You're probably getting that for a unit or an apartment or something like that. To get the stamp duty concession, for a $1 million home is like, yes, it would be a big benefit to the person who's doing it, but also like it's going to weirdly the benefit of phasing it means that you don't have any perverse incentives around collusion and pricing and all that sort of stuff. If you've got a situation where you're competing against other people and if you go to $1,001, you're not going to get this $50,000 concession. Well, it's also going to distort the market in terms of how much people are willing to bid. And so you might see a property that's worth 900 and you go, fuck, I'll bid 950 for it.
Yeah. To
blow them out of the water because I still want to get my tax concession. I don't want to get into a situation where I'm bidding $1 million and a bit and then I'm on the hook for another 50,000. So the low end of the market is going to inflate. And the high end of the market, obviously, there's no effect on that high end. So it's just going to make millennials compete even harder against one another for housing in Victoria, which is already the problem. Like it doesn't solve any problems, right?
Meanwhile, Tom's in Sydney just laughing at us.
Laughs in Sydney, $2 million median house price.
Yeah, a fucking apartment sold for like 2.3 on my street.
An apartment? Fuck, that's so crazy.
Crazy. Like, yeah, it's bonkers. Yeah, I'm sitting here in Sydney laughing in the... I don't think about affording a home at all. Like, I just don't dedicate any brain space to that because it's never going to happen.
Yeah, it's... Demand subsidies are not what we need. We need to increase supply, but we also need to, do other things to incentivize builders to build and dedicate resources to building and whatever it is, if it's cutting red tape as well and other things that go along with that make it easier, that's fine. But like we know we've played this game before, pumping more resources into the market to like quote unquote help people into their first homes. All it does is pump up the price. That's price inflation. Mm-hmm. We've seen it over the last 20 years. More of it is not going to help. And they talk about, a more efficient tax would be a land tax, a percentage tax. And it's like, okay, yes, that would be because it means that those people who are sitting in a $7 million home are also paying, right? Which is good. That's what you want. They can afford it. But good luck convincing anyone who's paid 50 grand out of pocket, like me as a voter who's bought a house and done that and paid 50 grand out of pocket, which I'm now going to be paying off on my mortgage over the next 29 years, to then turn around and pay a couple of grand a year on top of that as well for for a land value tax or something like that, people will tell you to get fucked. No politician is going to have the gumption to try and put something like that forward because it's just politically toxic, right? So you go, I just gave you 50 grand. You're going to double dip. You're going to take more tax away from me as well on top of that. Like it's tricky. It's a really tricky spot that the state's in because they rely so heavily on stamp duty for money.
Not just this state, but every state in Australia.
Every state in Australia does
internationally as well.
Yeah, it's just funny. They've had 10 years to come up with a policy, and even the one that they've got's not a slam dunk.
Dog shit. Yeah,
yeah,
it is. But you think about it from the consumer standpoint. What housing? Given that the housing prices have exploded, especially over the last 5-10 years, what house? You can't really get a house, in Victoria for less than $1 million, right? So what do? You just forego tens of thousands of dollars worth of tax discounts, tax concessions. I don't know. It's tricky.
Yeah.
Speaking of tricky, the ABC has been quite tricky this week.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of politically toxic.
There's a video that they uploaded to ABC iView, and I think maybe their YouTube page as well.
Yeah.
That contained an interview from the ABC 24 live stream with Nasser Mashni, who is an advocate for Palestine. I'm not sure his exact role. Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network is where he's from.
And he's the president of the...
He's the president.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, the president.
Yeah, it's not a large organisation. I think it's like, from what I read, it's like a 5-10 person organisation. It does a lot of advocacy work and sort of help raising funds for other charities that do work on the ground in Gaza and things like that. So it seems like from all accounts, from what I could see, it seems like a reasonably, sort of...
It's not an astroturfed organisation.
No.
Anyway, given what's happening in Gaza, Mashni wasn't particularly... he didn't mince words, let's put it that way. And I think we have the clip here.
Yeah, so this is the clip that doesn't exist anymore, but still exists by virtue of the internet. Thanks, internet. You can't take anything down from the internet.
Yeah, I feel that's the context here that's important. They did this interview, and then by the next day... it's gone.
Yeah.
They
uploaded it, then took it down. Yeah.
They uploaded it and then they've taken it down. It still showed up in Google results and things like that. So there was still the metadata was there to find it, but they made the concerted decision to pull it down.
Yeah.
With to my knowledge, to day of recording, no comment as to why. They just pulled it.
Which they're not allowed to do, by the way. The ABC, as the national broadcaster, has editorial standards which say when we pull something down, it needs to come with an explanatory note from an editor as to why.
As to why they've done it.
Was it in bad faith? Yeah. Was it incorrect information? There needs to be a reason as to why it gets pulled down. They just said it was uploaded in error, and then we took it down. And that's it. That's all we know.
And they just took it down. So like they said, they haven't given a reason, but let's listen to it, and I think you'll probably pick it up as to why.
Yeah.
Now is Nasser Mashni, President of the Australia-Palestine Advocacy Network. Good afternoon, Nasser.
Good afternoon, Kat.
Now, the Prime Minister has delivered what some would say are his strongest comments to date. What is your reaction to what you just heard?
We welcome the Prime Minister's stance and his language, and I would say to him it's 596 days too late. We're on day 597 of what the International Court of Justice said was a plausible genocide. What we've got is world leaders now perhaps scrambling to clean up their legacies. He talked about Israel as being a democracy. This is not a democracy. It's a rogue apartheid genocidal state headed up by a war criminal. It's time for Australia to do more than just talk about words, but to put things in place like sanctions, like ending two-way military trade and cancelling our contract with Albert Systems that killed Australian aid worker Zomi Francon.
You can hear her go, I just wanted to cut in and say that Israel denies these claims.
You can hear the brain breaking, be like, oh, I'm going to hear about this.
Oh, boy.
The producer's probably in her ear going, cut him off.
Stop him.
We'll play a little bit more and then we'll comment.
Okay, so just on some of the things that you're calling for there on the trade, this is a highly contested claim. The government insists that no weapons have been exported to Israel in the last 5 years.
Oh, we don't accept that. We've seen evidence presented by David Shoebridge and the Greens, Michael West Media, etc. Earlier on this year, we saw a weapon in the hands of an Israeli minister in Gaza that was manufactured in Queanbeyan. Australia is complicit in the weapons trade, in supplying, in supporting this genocide. It's time for us to end two-way military trade.
With respect to the sanctions on Israel, we know that Australia hasn't signed up to that statement over the weekend. The Prime Minister says it's because the statement was by members of the G7. Is that fair?
Well, it's a G7 statement. There's nothing stopping us from going out on our own. There's nothing stopping us from like-minded countries joining. Spain said some stuff. Canada was part of that G7, and we've signed on with Canada previously. Australia needs not to be the last country to enact sanctions against this rogue apartheid state. We need to do the right thing. We took a leadership role in apartheid South Africa. We can take a leadership position in apartheid Israel.
And he goes on to say a couple of things, which I think the main thing, which is what got the interview taken down, this is my personal opinion, is that at one point he says, from the river to the sea, which is a statement that has a lot of different valences depending on who you ask about it. If you ask, an Israeli, they might say, well, that's calling for the evisceration of Israel as a state. And he did hasten to say, like, what I mean by that is freedom for everyone who lives in that region, right? So, which it would be the Palestinian take on that, sort of.
So we're not buying that this is an honest, mistaken upload.
No, because you don't,
with an editorial correction.
Because if you've got a content management system like the ABC does, I'm sure, like, there's thumbnails that get picked up. There's like a little description of the clip that gets, put up online and all this sort of stuff. Like if you look at the Crikey article, which talks about this, there's like, so the preview on ABC iView says, a PM's Gaza comments too late, says advocate. So like a copy editor has gone through, put a subtitle to that, uploaded it on iView, uploaded it on YouTube. Like none of that happens by accident, right? Like that is all part of their deliberate content management process. And I think what it comes down to is that, they'll say that there's a difference in editorial standards, right? Between an ABC TV live interview versus what they put on their website. Because not everything that goes on the TV show and in a live interview goes up on the website, right? However, I would argue that an analysis of what he has said, I don't think there's anything in there editorially that you would stand by in a live interview that you wouldn't stand by from a journalistic perspective in having that up on your website. He is representing his point of view. Now, you may agree with it or not, but like there is nothing that he has said there that doesn't have at least contested evidence behind it. Right?
Yeah. And
there's nothing he said there that's like outright false. They're things that are his perspective or things that are either evidence-based or have contested evidence behind them, like the two-way military trade argument, right?
Yeah. And he's not up there saying like Hamas did nothing wrong.
Yeah, he's not screaming and yelling. He's not even a mention of
exactly. Hamas at all. Like this was all about just the death toll in Gaza. And the military campaign that's going on there. Like none of it was about anything that I think you could remotely kind of consider controversially supporting something that would warrant taking down a Palestinian perspective on what's happening.
Calling it an apartheid state is like I understand why that sounds radical, but that's the argument I was more or less making on this show last week, where I was saying, well, you can be a majority theocratically Jewish state, you can be a democracy, or, like you can't have all of these things at once. If you're going to have a majority Arab population that has a separate set of rules for it than you do, like that's what an apartheid state is, right?
That's literally what it is.
That's we're describing apartheid South Africa there, right? So, and calling, Netanyahu a war criminal, it's like, well, that's something that the International Court of Justice has said. There is a warrant out for his arrest on those terms. There is to say that it's a genocide, it's not something I necessarily would ascribe to, because as I've said before, it is a term of art. It has a specific legal meaning, but there are organizations out there that study this that said there is a plausible case for genocide to be made. You know, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, like there are places out there that say that what Israel has been doing in Gaza over the last couple of years may amount to a genocide. So, you know, and things like the two-way military trade and the you know, that sort of stuff. It's like, well, there's evidence out there to say that, yeah, Australia might be selling things, components of materials that go into weapons that are being used in Gaza. There's evidence out there.
Or at least has certainly sold them in the past.
In the past,
anyway.
But also there's on the books with the Australian Bureau of Statistics is like revenue coming in from like ammunition sales. So it's like, so is that still happening or is it not still happening? It seems like it's on the books. We're banking checks from somewhere for this material that we're selling, which could be the kind of stuff that's going into weapons, which is occurring in Gaza. Like there's no evidence behind these statements. So it's like, it's not like he was getting on there and being like, you know, saying something anti-Semitic and screaming and yelling and, you know, like it seemed like a pretty reasonable kind of...
He was very measured and came with facts, like came with notes, like, he wasn't just scrambling to say stuff off the top of his head. He was prepared, measured, and like definitely not breaching any editorial standards that I can think of.
A bit like quite measured in that situation. I think more measured than I would be in that such a situation, talking about the scale of human suffering that's occurring right now in Gaza. He was very measured for someone who's got such a close personal relationship to it. You know, his father, you know, came from Gaza, was there for the Nakba. Like, you know, like he's got a close personal relationship to what happens, you know, in Gaza, and to speak so eloquently with it, about it on the news, and to maintain such composure, I think is actually like pretty impressive, to be honest. And to then, you know, take that interview and for whatever reason decide to pull it down because it wasn't meant to go up. I don't know. It just seems like some real bullshit there. It's like,
if the media doesn't want to be looking like that they are just like pro-Israel no matter what.
Yeah.
They're not beating those allegations right now.
They're not convincing me. It really does seem like someone got a bee in their bonnet because, you know, Palestinian voices were being heard. And this guy's a regular on ABC. It's not like he's not on ABC. Like he's on there, like they know him, they know his perspective, they know, you know what Mashni's going to say about the Palestinian conflict when you get him on, because he's a very publicly, you know, advocating on all of these issues. And it's, I don't know, it's really disappointing that the ABC of all places, which is meant to have an interest in, you know, public access journalism and showing both sides of the conflict, is really, it seems like what it is. They're pulling down a pro-Palestinian voice because he was too vociferous in his critique of Israel, and that pissed people at the ABC off, and they took it down. Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Particularly in the aftermath of so I forget her name, but the journalist who was removed from
Antoinette Lattouf,
that was right. Like removed from their position on, like, you know, their casual position because
she reshared
the evidence showed. She reshared
a Human Rights Watch story on Instagram. Fucking hell. Which the ABC later reported on. So it's like, so if I shared the ABC story, would that have been fine? Like, the whole thing's so fucking ridiculous.
But part of that case was that then there were the WhatsApp group chats from people being like, well, we're going to make a coordinated effort to put pressure on the ABC to take
from a group of lawyers
this person off the air because it was anti-Israel sentiment. And like, you know, if in the wake of that, is that did they do this preemptively because they're afraid of more action like that? Or like, it does not look good, no matter how you shake.
There are people we know this, there are people on the ABC board that are, you know, ex-Sky, ex-Murdoch, ex-whatever. And I think the ABC's I think they've tried to capitulate to the Murdoch media and the right wing by sort of, you know, showing, oh, look, we can integrate your perspectives on our board and bring you guys in. And it's just like, well, now the call's coming from inside the house now. Like, it's like, then now we've just got Murdoch. We've got the Murdoch media and we've got Murdoch media light everywhere else because their perspective seems to be prized and represented over and above everyone else in the media. It really feels like The Guardian is probably one of the few places in the Australian media, mainstream media landscape, which doesn't have that kind of anti-leftist sort of bias. But
SBS World News Australia is also a great
that
source
people actually watch, Adam. Not just my nonna, but actual people. Yeah. I don't know. It's disappointing
every day
because it's so infrequent that you see and hear Palestinian perspectives on Australian media anyway to begin with, and to have one and go, oh no, sorry, that one's a bit spicy. We're just going to take that down. It's just like what happens like both sides, kind of like objective reporting journalism. Like it just seems so. You may not agree with the perspective. I don't agree with everything he said there or how he characterized it, but like I still think it's worthwhile people being exposed to the viewpoint and go, okay, there's this Israeli perspective, there's this Palestinian perspective. I'm going to read them both and come to my own understanding. If you just take the other side down because you don't agree with it, then it's like, where's the public interest access journalism supposed to happen there? Like,
it's not like they hosted a climate denier. This is this is actually where there are multiple perspectives on what's happening.
And here we've got Blair Cottrell to give us the white supremacist shithead perspective. Blair?
Mm-hmm.
On that
Speaking
note,
of shithead perspectives.
we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our Lubius, home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. And make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at our handle at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and mother flipping TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Threads at tom.heath.
You can follow me down to VO3, just into that platform where I'm going to be just pumping out some quality.
I don't want to know what you're pumping out.
Pumping out.
Leave it alone. Put it
content.
down.
Just bangers, just banger after banger.
Bangers. Yeah, gonna make some music. Gonna have some tropical locations. Just a lot of interesting, engaging content.
I don't want to hear about your bangers. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week. Disgusting.